The gunshot that shattered the quiet of the countryside estate was the same one that destroyed Eleanor's world. It wasn't meant for her, but the force of it sent her tumbling down the marble stairs, a blinding pain in her side as she clutched the banister. As her vision swam, she saw him, Dominic, his face a mask of cold fury as he dispatched the would-be assassin, the man he'd called his brother, before turning to her. In that moment, his icy blue eyes met hers, and the mask cracked, revealing a terror she had never seen in the man who ruled the city's underworld. He was her brother, the one who had raised her from a child, the only family she had ever known, and now, as the chaos subsided, he was the one cradling her in his arms, whispering promises that could not mend the breaking of her heart, a heart that was unknowingly carrying a secret that would bind them in a way that defied all reason and morality. If this intense beginning has you hooked, please show your support for stories of love and redemption by liking this video, leaving a comment, sharing it with someone who needs a dose of hope, and subscribing to the channel, Kindness Forever, for more heartfelt narratives. The weeks that followed were a blur of sterile hospital rooms and the heavy, suffocating silence that now lived between them. The bullet was removed, but the wound it left was more than just physical. Eleanor, who had always been the gentle light in Dominic's dark world, now looked at him with haunted eyes. The revelation of her pregnancy came not from a doctor, but from a sudden, violent sickness that overtook her, and the subsequent test that confirmed her fears. It was a truth she couldn't articulate, a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She knew that one night of terrible, ill-advised comfort following a nightmare was a mistake born from a loneliness that had festered for years, a desperate need for the only person who had ever shown her kindness. She had convinced herself it was a dream, an aberration, but the life growing inside her was a stark, unforgiving reality. The shame was a physical weight, a silent scream that she choked on every time Dominic, with his guarded affection, asked her how she was feeling, his guilt over her injury evident in every gentle touch he bestowed upon her, a touch she now flinched from. Dominic was a man who dealt in absolutes, in power and control. The chaos of his life was his chosen battlefield, but the sight of Eleanor bleeding on his floor had shattered something fundamental in him. He had spent his life building an empire to protect her, to shield her from the very darkness he commanded. But the discovery of the assassin, the man who had been a trusted lieutenant, had shown him a weakness in his fortress he couldn't accept. In his paranoid vigilance, he watched her every move, noticing her pallor, the way she'd press a hand to her stomach, the mysterious appointments. When he finally confronted her, the truth that spilled from her lips was more devastating than any bullet. She told him she was pregnant, her voice a whisper of despair, and in the same breath, she told him to hate her, that it was his, a consequence of a moment of weakness neither could undo. The silence that followed was a vortex, pulling them both into an abyss of horror, disgust, and a feeling so profound it threatened to consume him. He, who had never felt an ounce of remorse for the lives he'd taken, was now drowning in a sea of self-loathing, a hopeless, forbidden love for the woman he had sworn to protect as a sister now twisting into a monstrous obsession. The days turned into a painful, suffocating dance. Dominic's solution was born of desperation. He would move them to a secluded estate, away from the prying eyes of his world and the judgment of society. He couldn't let her go, the very thought was a torture. He spoke of a new life, a fresh start, but beneath the promise of safety was a man who was grasping at the only rope he had, a chance to be the father to this child and, in his own twisted way, the husband to its mother. Eleanor was trapped, not by walls or guards, but by the staggering weight of her own emotions. She was torn between the abhorrence of their shared blood and a love that had grown in the shadow of their peculiar life. She saw his desperation, the fierce, protective anger that he now directed at anyone who came near her. This wasn't the detached mafia boss, this was a man terrified of losing his world. He started leaving small, thoughtful gifts on her nightstand, books she'd mentioned, a soft shawl for the coming cold. He would sit with her for hours, not speaking, just present, a penitent in the cathedral of his own guilt. The turning point came on a stormy night. Eleanor had been racked with a panic attack, her mind consumed by the future of her baby, a child that would be a symbol of their greatest sin. Dominic found her in her room, sobbing uncontrollably. In that raw moment, the walls they had built crumbled. He didn't offer a rationale or a solution, he simply held her, pulling her into his arms, and for the first time, he let her see the depth of his own agony. He told her of his fear, his shame, and, finally, the truth of his heart. He was hopelessly in love with her, not as a brother, but as a man who had found in her the only thing that had ever made sense in his violent, lonely world. He didn't ask for forgiveness or for her love in return, he simply asked for her to let him be there, to let him be a part of her life, to help her raise the child that was, in a way, a testament to their broken, complex connection. The storm raged outside, but inside, a new kind of tempest was born, one of acceptance and a desperate, tentative hope. If this story has stirred your emotions, please take a moment to connect with us. Your engagement means the world to us and helps these stories reach more hearts. The following morning, the air was different. There was a fragile peace, a new understanding. Eleanor looked at Dominic, not with the shame of yesterday, but with a weary resignation that had begun to feel like acceptance. She saw a man who was willing to defy the world, his empire, and even his own conscience to be at her side. He was not just the brother who had failed her, but the man who would fight to the end for her and the child. The fear hadn't vanished, but it had taken a back seat to a burgeoning will to live, to build something from the ashes of their tragedy. The road ahead was paved with the impossible, but as she placed a tentative hand on her stomach and watched Dominic move to the window, his silhouette strong against the emerging sun, she knew they were no longer two separate souls lost in the dark. They were a singular, flawed unit, bound by a secret that could destroy them, but also by a love so powerful, it had the potential to save them. Please, before this story ends, leave us a comment and tell us how you would have handled the forgiveness of a love so forbidden. And if this journey of hope and second chances touched your heart, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Forever for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit, because in the end, it is love, in all its complicated forms, that truly conquers all.